Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for a show. It's been about 3 months. Be honest with you, just to start off with, and I hope that this isn't going to be a massive development as far as the video, because I've got a lot to try to cover. But at the same time, as most of you probably realize, I'm pretty pissed off at YouTube for what they've done to the channels. And if any of you own a channel and can figure out how to get the comments back on the main page where everybody could see them, drop me a line, because it's I'm not spending one iota of time screwing around with the settings on the page. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to basically propel my way onto HBO or ESPN by having a fancy channel on YouTube. And the people at YouTube just don't understand. Turn your volumes down, by the way, because this could get real salty real quick. People at YouTube don't understand. If something ain't fucking broke, don't fucking fix it. And my channel was not broke. It was fine the way it was. Now nobody can find the comments, and I really think what they're trying to do is basically get rid of people like me. They don't like my point of views. They don't like the fact that most of you don't give a crap about them. You give more crap about the people who you watch and follow on YouTube. Neither here nor there. Missed a lot. Going by memory, going back just to touch on a couple of things. We had the rematch of Orlando Salido and Juanma Lopez in Puerto Rico. Before the fight, I would have thought that Lopez was going to get his revenge on Salido. Middle of the fight, 5th or 6th round, looked like he did, because he dropped Salido hard. But one of the things that's going to plague Juanma's career is his lack of endurance and his lack of good defense. Up until the time he fought Salido and even Rogers Matagua, his defense was a really super good offense. And he was exposed in the Matagua fight. They blamed that on weight. He looked real good in a couple of 126-pound title fights, got dropped a couple of times, and all of a sudden these two flaws became readily apparent. And Orlando Salido, although he's not going to probably be a Hall of Fame fighter, he has by far exposed the worst in Juan Manuel Lopez's game. And he had Lopez in big trouble in the 10th round of that fight when he got knocked down and they called the fight off. I'm a little surprised they called it off after just one knockdown of a hometown, a hometown fighter. But it was going downhill from there, and Salido was going to stop him eventually. Kelly Pavlik made a comeback, looked impressive. He's got Robert Garcia as his trainer now. He's moved to the West Coast, away from Youngstown. Scored mostly with his left hand in a 2nd round blowout. And I'm going to have, I got a lot of these fights I watched in basically after they happened on the internet, and there was nothing really much to that fight. Another one was Shinsuke Yamanaka handing Victor Archinian yet another defeat in a bantamweight title fight, the WBC bantamweight title fight over in Japan. This one more lopsided. The thing is, I think I was thinking about this as far as the weight divisions and stuff that like Floyd Mayweather was saying, which I'll get to later. There's something about, there's an invisible Mendoza line somewhere where certain fighters take one jump too many. And the most apparent in my mind, etched in stone in my mind, was Alexis Arguello going to 140, because he hit Aaron Pryor with shots that would have broken the studs in your house or the apartment that you live in, and nothing happened to Aaron Pryor. Aaron Pryor's chin was not the most reliable, okay? But if you really took a close look at the two of them, you could hide 2 Alexis Arguellos behind 1 Aaron Pryor. And Pryor was just naturally a bigger man. I think with Victor Archinian, I mean, he was an absolute beast and killer at 112, even as good or better at 115. To jump to 118, for some reason, I don't know whether it's the size of these guys and the length of these guys, like Becco, Mares, Yamanaka, who's the other guy? The Moreno. I really believe that he cannot get his power to the target in this division. You know, Yanni Perez, who I thought was ruined in the Abner-Mares fight, was the only one who gave up his height and length to Darchinyan and paid the price for it. Much the same way somebody like Christian Mahares and others have found out the hard way. Then moving, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things here, but moving right along even more recently, Brandon Rios, who was supposed to fight Yuriorkis Gamboa, and you know, a lot of you after my last video commented you didn't preview Gamboa and say anything about Gamboa and Brandon Rios. It's because I knew the fight wasn't going to happen. It was too far-fetched. This kind of reminded me when they announced the fight way back in 2001 when Bernard Hopkins had got done dispatching Felix Trinidad in the middleweight tournament. The next fight they mentioned was him moving the cruiserweight to fight James Toney, who had just beaten Vasily Jurov. And I thought to myself, that's way too big of a jump, going from, you know, the cruiserweight used to be 190 and they moved it to 200. So you're saying go from 160 all the way to 200. Even if he came in half the distance, which would be like 180. I didn't see it happening, and they talked about it, and it was scrapped. And the same thing with this. This was signed, from what I understand and what I read about this, supposedly there's an investigation going on because they think, you know, both Brandon Rios and Yuriorkis Gamboa are both top-ranked fighters, and there is accusations, finger-pointing going on by Top Rank, saying that Golden Boy basically got a hold of Gamboa's ear and talked him out of that fight and has tried to get him to leave Top Rank to go to Golden Boy to, I guess, fight easier, you know, setup fights, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Insert Richard Abril, who insulted Rios and started a ruckus at the Miami kickoff conference for the Gamboa and Rios fight, with some trash talking to Rios and this and that, and then they basically decided to sign this fight. HBO passed on it, so this was because HBO was going to telecast Gamboa and Rios. I have no idea, and maybe some of you can voice your opinions on this. Why in the hell would HBO ever turn away from a Brandon Rios fight? He's on par, in my opinion, with Fernando Vargas. Why would you? I mean, even knowing the way that this turned out with Rios, you know, basically laying an egg, he's never in a bad fight, so to speak. So basically, they signed this fight between Richard Abril and Rios, and you know, my thinking is, okay, this is, you know, basically Abril doesn't know what he's doing. He's gonna be careful what you ask for. And this has to go down as one of the worst decisions maybe in the history of the sport, at least in recent years. And I've got to go back to, I mean, when I think of really, really bad decisions, Abril outboxed Rios. You know, some people could argue that basically he won a shutout. I had it somewhere around 10 rounds to 2, 9 rounds to 3 if I was being very generous for Rios. But there's no way on earth that this fight was a draw, and there's no way on earth that this fight was Rios's. He lost this fight. He was beaten. He was outboxed. He was outmaneuvered. He was outworked. He was outgunned. I mean, the thing is that if Abril had real power, he would have done some serious damage to Rios, and this was exposure. They're blaming it on the weight. This is another tactic when the guy doesn't look good. They blame it on the weight. He didn't make weight. He didn't, for the second time in a row, he did not make a contracted weight. He shouldn't be trying to beat up on 135 pounders anymore. And I'm starting to look at, is he really capable of contending with the Timothy Bradleys of the world? Because I don't really think he is after seeing what I saw. I think he's a good fighter. I think he's an honest fighter. But I think that his limitations have been brought to the forefront. With that said, I thought Abril beat him fair and square. I mean, newspapers and some internet sites basically called this disgraceful. I couldn't agree more. You're going to ask me what bad decisions can I compare this to? Okay, the Lennox Lewis Evander Holyfield draw. This was worse than that, actually, and this was a worse decision than Whitaker and Chavez, the Whitaker Chavez draw. Really, really super bad decision in history. One of the worst was, if you look back to I think it was 1979. WBC champion Carlos Zarate was defending his title for like the 9th or 10th time against Lupe Pintor. Okay, he knocked Pintor down in the 4th round, basically outboxed him, outpunched him, except for maybe the last 2 or 3 rounds. One judge had the fight scored 12 rounds to 3 for Zarate. The other 2 judges had it by a point or 2 for Pintor. Basically, it was a forced passing of the guard, because anybody who watched that fight knew that Zarate beat Pintor. They were basically stablemates, and they had the same trainer who sat out to avoid any controversy. Needless to say, there was controversy. Zarate was the better fighter. He was the more distinguished champion, and because he didn't knock Pintor out, they basically took his title. And you look at the scores in that fight. That was a really bad one. Another one was a non-title fight, in which, back in the 80s, in which Dwight Muhammad Cowie, formerly Dwight Braxton, was fighting in a cruiserweight elimination fight, a 10-round fight, against Ozzy Ocasio of Puerto Rico. It was on the undercard of one of Evander Holyfield's fights on Showtime. Dr. Ferdy Pacheco and Marv Albert, or Steve Albert, whoever was one of the Alberts that was calling the fights with him, called it one of the worst decisions of all time. Cowie, Braxton dominated the fight, and as the crowd in Las Vegas is booing and Ocasio and his people are leaving the ring, they're flipping the bird to all the people who are booing them and whatnot, because they knew they lost the fight and they got away with a robbery. I don't know how they did it. It was politics. And this was the same thing. I don't know where they got off, basically, giving Rios this fight. Oh, what's this? Game on. Mike Tyson says he impregnated a jail official. Huh. Then we had another fight. It was a Golden Boy card in which Abner Mares moved up to test the waters 122 pounds against Eric Morel in more of a grudge fight, a Mexico-Puerto Rico grudge fight. I would have thought before the fight that a small token victory for Eric Morel would be the last of the distance, which is what he did. He got bopped around the ring as bad as I thought he was, but he performed better in this fight than I think any fight in his career, as far as showing his heart, his determination, physical conditioning, and a will to win that's never been seen before, because he could have packed it in any round of this fight and called it a day, and nobody would have blamed him. I wouldn't have anyway. And I thought it was a very gutsy performance, but I thought that, you know, Abner Mares basically nearly shut him out. Ansel Moreno won a stoppage on the undercard. The idea is the two of them will unify titles at 118 pounds before they go on to bigger and better things at higher weights. I wonder about this, because I would have thought not too long ago that Mares was the class at 118. I still think that, but as I'm seeing more and more of Moreno fighting in the United States, fighting away from Latin America, he's starting to grow on me a little bit more, and he's becoming, in my eyes, he's looking a lot more dangerous for somebody like Mares, because the thing is that you have to ask yourself, if Mares couldn't take out a guy like Morel, although he beat him pillar to post, and he's kind of shot, and was in trouble at times against Vic Darchinyan, in trouble at times against Yanni Perez, in trouble at times against Joseph Agbeko, I think that, in my opinion, Moreno is slightly, if not a lot better than a lot of those guys, and hungrier. if not anything else, which can go a long way. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's a pick'em fight where I would have made Abner Mares a clean favorite a long time ago. Alright, as many of you have known, a fight's been signed with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Andy Lee. It was set for the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas, and then officials, I don't know who it was. I only read a little bit into this because things change so often that they basically said the fight couldn't take place. I don't know for security reasons, this and that. Now I hear it's back on. It says right, Chavez Lee fight KO'd at Sun Bowl, University of Texas, by the University of Texas. Now they're saying it's back on again. University of Texas will allow Chavez Lee fight at Sun Bowl. The Chancellor of the University of Texas announced that he will allow a high-profile boxing match to be held at the Sun Bowl. I don't know how big of a draw. Oh, one fight I did forget to mention was James Kirkland versus Carlos Molina in a very controversial ending. James Kirkland is being absolutely schooled by Molina. He basically scores a knockdown, 9th, 10th round or whatnot, 10th round, 9th, 10th round of a 12-round fight, and Molina gets up. The bell rings as the knockdown's happening, right after the knockdown, okay. He gets up, and his corner comes in the ring because the round's over, and he's disqualified. I call bullshit on that. Here's the deal: when in all of history, this is after the Saved by the Bell rules, which used to happen back in the 70s and before. If a knockdown occurred right a second or two before the bell, and the bell rings while the fighter is down, as soon as it's in the rules, as soon as he gets to his feet, the round is over, and the corner can aid him. Because remember, the bell rings, there is a 60-second clock running before the next round starts. So some of that time is being eaten up by a referee's count. That the corner doesn't have time to basically rest their fighter and revive him. So, in this fight, when the knockdown happened, the bell occurred, Molina gets up in plenty of time, his corner comes into the ring, and the referee basically calls the fight off. And I'm thinking to myself, watching this, going, what in the hell, WTF, is this referee doing? I don't understand. These officials, in all honesty, need to be dragged right from the ring, right from ringside, and pulled into a paddy wagon or a cop car, and basically brought down, to a courthouse to have this documented, not lock them up, and basically suspend them. Because this behavior of just making up the rules as you go, and they're saying it's some Texas rule, is bullshit. I mean, the associated rules of boxing, a guy gets knocked down, you can't take from those 60 seconds. You can't take, right, the round is over. He gets up, the round is over automatically. There's no stopping the fight at that point. The round is over. If the guy can't continue, then you stop the fight. But that's always been a rule of boxing. So James Kirkland, who had lost every round of the fight up to that point and was going to lose this fight, and is going to lose if they fight a rematch, basically was given a gift. And this is the thing about him. As good as he looked against Alfredo Angulo, he looked 180 degrees worse against Molina. And against the top brass in this division, with the exception of maybe Cotto, he is going to feel the wrath of being outboxed and outmaneuvered at the highest level. He is basically, in my opinion, a gatekeeper. And that is that, a gatekeeper. HBO keeps investing money into him, but they will, and I know it was on the undercard, but they will not show, or whoever was doing it, I think it was a top ranked, a Golden Boy thing, but they will not invest in Brandon Rios, who had a world title. I mean, I don't get it. Alright, moving right along to last weekend. Also on a Friday night fights, it's looking like Michael Katsidis' career is, as a top contender, is over. The 140-pound division not going to be accommodating to him. Last weekend, Seth Mayhem Mitchell had to come back to stop Chaz Witherspoon. Very exciting to watch. has some promise later on. I think he's a lot more raw than Andre Ward was at the same point in his career. And I've got to wonder, for as long as the Klitschko's are on top of the division, whether or not he is ever going to bloom into a future world champion. They can't rule forever. They can't stay active forever. Somebody's going to fill the vacuum once they're gone. All right. The main event of that night, which was absolutely atrocious to me, even the fight being made, but it had to be made. This is one of those things where the politics of boxing actually are correct, where a fighter is a #1 contender and they deserve a shot at a title. All right, so we knew the styles were going to be terrible when they fought back in October, and it ended up being a no contest after Dawson was awarded a second-round knockout. WBC and linear light heavyweight champion Bernard Hopkins taking on Chad Dawson. I was listening to many reviews that people were doing, both on YouTube and on websites before this fight, and I was more, I wasn't amused, but I was more taken in by one that Dan Rafael of ESPN did, in which he said he has lost many a time betting against Bernard Hopkins, picking against Bernard Hopkins, and I would say the same thing. So with caution, I thought that the fight would be close no matter who won the fight, and I was absolutely wrong, because finally every fighter, and I'm going to talk more about this in previewing Mayweather and Cotto, every fighter is a puzzle. And sometimes there are multiple solutions to a puzzle, and sometimes there's only one solution to a puzzle. And Bernard Hopkins has seemed to be one of those very tricky puzzles where there may not even be one solution to them, but a mixture of a bunch of different attempts at other solutions. Chad Dawson seems to have that solution, and it's the fact that he is bigger, taller, younger, stronger, faster. End of story. Hopkins looked uncomfortable in this fight. The judge that had this fight scored a draw. It needs to have his judging license taken away. And the judges that had it 9 rounds to 3 or whatever they had it, and I think ESPN had it 10 rounds to 2, which is more in line with the way I saw it. It had it right on the nose. Hopkins really was looking to lay traps for Dawson. Dawson did very well to work and manage the distance between them. I thought that, as Teddy Atlas did on Friday Night Fights previewing this with Joe Tessitore, was that he said that if Dawson stayed at a distance, he wins the fight easy. And he didn't just do that. He basically worked while he was on the inside, dropping shots to Hopkins' body. That's one of the things that got very much overlooked in this fight, was the amount of body work that Chad Dawson did. Because Hopkins, when he was coming up at middleweight, was a notorious, very good body puncher. Body punchers usually don't like being hit to the body, and Dawson exposed this in this fight. It got rough at times, like the first fight. They both initiated with lowering their heads. Dawson paid the price for it because he was cut on both eyes, and basically cruised to an easy decision victory. Where do they go from here? I want to see Dawson rematch with Joan Pascal, and then they can go after Bibit, Shumanov, and all the rest of them. Because I don't think that those two I think those two have unfinished business, and I'm not so sure Dawson beats Pascal. I think the styles just happen to work out just right for Pascal. Hopkins, I'm not so sure, because the thing is, he deserved to get a decision in the first fight with Pascal and really won the second fight handily. I am not sure he can keep up that consistent work against the younger guys anymore, and there are not enough big money fights for him unless I envision him trying to go against that guy that just beat who is it, Ledbedev at cruiserweight, trying to basically do what Roy Jones and James Toney couldn't do, which is get himself knocked out. Well, Roy Jones did get knocked out by him, and James Toney was on the verge of getting knocked out by him. And Hopkins wants to be the first, I guess, of the geriatric group to beat the guy. That would be my bet if they can make a fight. Would be against Denis Ledbedev. Although Hopkins is going to have to travel overseas to do it, and personally, I wasn't impressed with Hopkins in this fight. Of course, Joey Cole. Holy crap. Neither here nor there. Here's the situation. I think Hopkins' career is it's more advanced into the twilight now, where it's like 1 or 2 fights from over, and really, if I was him, I'd fight some fight, Babich Shumanov or somebody, win, and go into the sunset. It's almost ridiculous now at how the WBC has to mandate and order a rematch or strip him of the belt in order to get him to fight the Chad Dawsons of the world. And the public is not going to stand to see like him fight Roy Jones Jr. for the 3rd time. I mean, let's just be clear. I'm not saying that he's going to do that, but I'm just saying that they are cherry-picking opponents for him unless they're leveraged by an organization like the WBC to fight Chad Dawson. I'm just saying that. All right, let's go to the schedule and the preview for this week, because I know it's a big week, and I know a lot of you are kind of upset with me for only doing videos when these big fights come along, which I wasn't really. I was trying to get a video up a couple of weeks ago. You have no idea what a production this is to get a video up and running. All right, Bundridge, Spinks purse bid won by Golden Boy. Man gets 21 life for killing ex-Olympic boxer. What was that? Oh, Roshi Wells. Oh, hey, there's a Dmitry Pirog sighting. Basically, he extended his record by unanimous decision over Nobuhiro Ishida by unanimous decision to retain his WBO middleweight title. Okay, great. Oh, another fight that I forgot. Paulie Malignaggi went to the Ukraine to take on undefeated Ukrainian Vyacheslav Senchenko. And again, I did not see this fight live on the pay-per-view online. I basically watched it uploaded. But Malignaggi looked better than he has in previous fights. He scored with solid shots to Senchenko's eye and basically swelled his eye shut, made it a bloody mess, and stood his ground. He didn't run. There were some sizzling exchanges. This turned out a lot better than I thought it would for Malignaggi, and all of a sudden, one win like this revives your career. And he's back in the mix because he's with Golden Boy, and they can match him up against Devin Alexander or any number of fighters in the welterweight division. So another payday awaits him. A good job for Paulie Malignaggi. I've never been a big fan of his, but when you show guts like this, like he did in his fight with Cotto, I mean, I think you have to give the guy kudos. I wrote him off after Amir Khan and Ricky Hatton manhandled him. So let's go to the schedule now, because we all know what we're looking at this week. May 4th, which is tomorrow night in Las Vegas, Daniel Ponce de Leon is taking on Eduardo Lescano in a 12-round junior lightweight fight. Ishe Smith of First Contender fame is taking on I.E. Bruce in a 10-round junior middleweight fight. Good to see he could still make that weight after all these years. That's going to be on Fox Deportes and Fox Sports Net, which is somewhere in like the 600s, I think, on my TV. Why is the camera blinking? I hope I'm not running out of tape. Okay. Couple of cards on the 5th. One on ESPN2 in Uncasville, Connecticut. Demetrius Andrade taking on Rudy Cisneros. Alright, go with Andrade in that fight. Pay-per-view, Las Vegas, May 5th. This is what all of you have been waiting for. 2 fights to really be concerned with. Mayweather's protege, Jesse Vargas, is taking on Steve Forbes. I wonder if how much does Forbes have left? It's the welterweight. It's in the welterweight division. Forbes has not looked good outside junior lightweight really. Go with Vargas in this one by decision. Then a very intriguing, interesting matchup: Saul Canelo Alvarez defending his WBC super welterweight junior middleweight title against Sugar Shane Mosley. Will this be a repeat of Mosley's last 3 fights? Will this be a repeat of the Margarito fight? flip a coin. The thing is, the reason why I'm going with the repeat of his last few fights, I'm not sure Alvarez is going to be able to get Mosley out of there. Get him into retreat and survival mode, yes. Get him out of there, I don't know. And the other thing too is, I want to see Alvarez react when firepower comes back at him, because he isn't the speedster that Pacquiao is, and he's not the defensive master that Mayweather was, or elusive like Sergio the Snake Mora was. So my thing is, he's going to get hit in this fight, and he's going to get hit hard in this fight. Both of them are. Mosley's dealt with getting hit hard in the past. Alvarez, I'm not all that certain, and I'm wondering what's going to happen when he gets hit by a big puncher like Mosley. Most people think that Alvarez is going to go through Mosley and basically end his days at the championship level. I'm not 100% sold on that yet. I always think that these veteran fighters are laying in wait for the perfect style to be put in front of them. And this is the same, not the same way I felt, but the same way I feel now in retrospect when Mosley was waiting to fight Margarito. Here's the situation with this. When they're in transition, going from outside to inside, that's Mosley's chance, just like it's going to be Cotto's chance against Mayweather. Mosley has the better chance of winning this fight, though. If they're at distance, Mosley's going to lose. If they're inside, Mosley's going to lose. It's that middle ground that Mosley's got to take advantage of when they go transitioning inside, from outside to in and inside to out. The same way he did against Margarito, where he went upside his head. Because a lot of you forget that Margarito basically nearly impaled Mosley on the end of his jab when they were at distance. If Margarito can do that, Alvarez is going to do that. It's got to be in the middle ground. Logic tells me that Alvarez will win a decision. A contentious... Fucking unbelievable. Alright, the tape ended. Don't worry about it. We'll just keep rolling. I'm going with Alvarez by the slightest of margins. Don't be surprised if Mosley goes upside his head. But again, I'm not sold 100% on this kid. He's looked good recently. I really think that, in my opinion, I think that Mosley's going to provide the sternest test to him. It's just how much of a test he can provide. Now, the main event. Miguel Cotto defending his WBA junior middleweight title against Floyd Mayweather. A lot of you are excited about this fight. I'm not so much excited about it. And the reason I say this is, I really think that Mayweather is going to win this fight big. I don't even think Cotto has a puncher's chance in this fight. If he's got any type of chance at all, I'm thinking back to like a Lloyd Honeyghan, Donald Curry kind of a chance, where maybe the weight is not that great for Mayweather, and maybe he gets cut or something, and they've got to stop the fight, because of that. But otherwise, as far as outworking Mayweather, people forget Mayweather takes a really good shot. Okay, he was put into a sitting position by Mosley as hard as Mosley could hit him, and he couldn't get him off his feet. Okay. He takes a really good shot. Cotto's power has diminished coming up from 140 to 147 to 154. I think that Cotto's only chance in this fight is the same as Mosley's, only even less of a chance. And that is managing a middle ground when the action basically is away and then it starts coming forward, and then that's his chance. And then they get locked up in a clinch or locked up fighting inside. He's not going to beat Mayweather right up close in his face. He's not going to beat Mayweather from way outside. This is what happens when a very good fighter or even borderline great fighter like Cotto fights a pound-for-pound great fighter like Mayweather. If you don't have the physical advantages like a Vernon Forrest had over Shane Mosley, the only way you're going to do this is the same way Sugar Ray Leonard did it to Tommy Hearns or to Marvin Hagler or any number of people. And again, he's the exception to the rule. And that is managing the fight at middle ground. the way I see this going is Cotto is going to study and solve Cotto over the first 4 or 5 rounds. This fight will probably be somewhat competitive for 5 or 6 rounds, and Mayweather's going to pull away from him. The question is, can Mayweather stop Cotto? Can Mayweather force Cotto to go into survival mode like he forced Mosley to go into survival mode, and like Pacquiao forced Cotto to go into survival mode? I don't know if Mayweather's temperament is to do such a thing to Cotto. I would think that there are more solutions to the Cotto puzzle than there were to the Mosley puzzle. And Mayweather was saying this in an interview with ESPN that Cotto makes a lot of mistakes. And that's what I'm saying about the puzzle. Mayweather's puzzle is tougher to solve than Cotto's. And Mayweather's got a lot of solutions. So the biggest question for this fight is this: will Mayweather be able to stop Cotto? Because I almost am to the point where I'll bet the ranch that Mayweather's leaving that ring with Cotto's belt. Mayweather's to the point of his career now where he has to look really good in every fight. The Victor Ortiz fight was a risk. He ended it with a knockout, albeit tainted. And he's basically was trying very hard to get a knockout over Mosley in their fight. I'm guessing that this fight is going to resemble more of that one, except I don't think Cotto's going to be able to hurt Mayweather. And the reason I'm saying this for you Cotto fans is they're fighting Cotto's at a disadvantage with the gloves. They're going to be fighting with 10-ounce gloves on. Okay, these are both 140-pound fighters fighting at 154 pounds with 10-ounce gloves. So the chances of Cotto being able to hurt Mayweather, who takes a pretty good shot, are not very, are kind of slim in my opinion. I'm going with Mayweather wide in this fight. There may be some anxious moments. I'm kind of not seeing it. And I really think that unless Cotto can do some really serious body work, but Mayweather plays defense even to his body. I mean, it's hard to get to his body too. He blocks really well, covers up really well, does the Philly shoulder roll really well. And I don't know that Cotto's going to be able to contend with this. We were talking about puzzles and how hard they are to solve. Each fighter is a puzzle. I've seen the solution to the Mayweather puzzle. I've seen it in the DeMarcus Corley fight. I saw it in the Mosley fight. I saw it in the Zab Judah fight. There's a blind side in his defense. Like every car, when you drive every car, there's a blind spot. Mayweather's got a blind defensive spot where it's penetrable, like an Achilles heel. And it's basically from a wide right hand that both DeMarcus Corley, Zab Judah, and especially Shane Mosley landed on him. His defense cannot pick this up. And the problem for Cotto is that he is a strong left-hand dominant fighter. Even the problem for Pacquiao, the same thing. He doesn't have that wide arcing right hand that those other 3 guys were able to get in. Now, I know if you're Mayweather's fans, you're going to say, Bull, he's impenetrable. Every fighter is beatable, people. Every fighter, even the greatest of all time, was beaten. Mayweather is beatable. The problem is finding the guy that can execute what I just said and not get himself tore up by this caged cat, which is what Mayweather is. I mean, you give him an opportunity, he'll tear you up. So, and that's what I really think. I think he's going to bust up Cotto and swell him up and maybe get him bleeding. And if he stops him, I'm thinking it's going to be more of a corner stoppage or a cut type stoppage. I don't know that Mayweather's going to get Cotto off his feet. And I sure as heck I can't see Cotto getting Mayweather off his feet. That's going to do it for this edition. Hopefully I can come back and recap and take lumps. Also, I want to mention, one of my videos that is getting a lot of play out there is the, what do you call it video? The 20 greatest boxers of all time. Sometimes I give up on the asinine comments I see that basically people post of, I can name 10 boxers, which I did in the comments, and you can't find a reason to squeeze Sugar Ray Leonard, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, George Foreman, or any of these modern guys in there when you have guys like Harry Greb or Joe Gans or Benny Leonard or I said Harry Greb, Mickey Walker, or Jimmy Wild, or you know, I can pull guys from 100 years ago out, okay. And basically, there's no room for the Mike Tysons or the Evander Holyfields of the world. I'm sorry, they shouldn't even be on the list to begin with. But that's all I'm going to say about that, and I will see you soon. Thanks, everybody.